The mansion sat atop the hill like a fortress of secrets. Its walls were polished, its gates gleaming under the California sun, and yet, inside, darkness festered where no one dared to look. The neighbors had whispered about the eccentric billionaire director for years, calling him a genius with a dark streak, but no one could have imagined what lay hidden behind those gilded doors. How could anyone? Even in Hollywood, where rumors fly faster than movie cameras, some truths are simply unimaginable. And that's exactly what made the discovery so shocking. The FBI found things in that mansion that made even the most hardened agents step back and question everything they thought they knew about human nature. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. It started like any other Sunday morning. The birds chirped over the manicured lawns, and the city stretched lazily into the day. But inside the mansion, there was an eerie stillness. No clatter of dishes, no laughter, just the quiet hum of air conditioning and something else, a subtle, unsettling absence that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. When the authorities arrived, they were greeted by a scene that was both ordinary and profoundly disturbing. A renowned filmmaker and his spouse, both icons in the entertainment world, had been found lifeless. The official cause? Unclear. But the details, the hidden compartments, the secret passages, and the evidence that no one could have predicted painted a much darker picture. Think about it. How often do we hear stories of Hollywood stars leading double lives? Sure, we know about scandals, secret marriages, and clandestine affairs. But murders? Mass disappearances? Hidden evidence of atrocities? Those are usually relegated to the scripts of blockbuster thrillers, not the front pages of reality. And yet, here we were, staring at a story that blurred the line between fiction and reality. If you thought you understood what wealth, fame, and power could protect, think again. Because in this case, all of that privilege couldn't hide the unimaginable truth forever. The first reports trickled in like a slow leak, each one more shocking than the last. Neighbors spoke of seeing the director's son pacing the driveway the night before the discovery. Some claimed to have heard raised voices, though no one could be sure. Law enforcement arrived to a house that appeared pristine on the surface but was riddled with hidden horrors beneath. Tiny clues, slight scratches on the floors, a smell that seemed faint but ever-present, an unnatural silence, pointed to the fact that the facade of normalcy was exactly that, a facade. And for the FBI agents combing through the mansion, every step revealed new contradictions. Nothing about this scene was simple, and every detail seemed designed to confuse, mislead, or terrify. You might be asking yourself, why would anyone suspect something so sinister in the home of a celebrated figure? Why would the authorities dig deeper? The answer is subtle but undeniable. Sometimes, the truth isn't found in what you see, it's found in the gaps. Missing items, inconsistent stories, faint traces of substances that didn't belong. These were the cracks through which the truth began to seep. And when the FBI finally entered the mansion's most secret chambers, the discoveries were so grotesque, so horrifying, that the story went from local rumor to international shockwave almost instantly. Agents described the scene in hushed tones, speaking to each other as if afraid that speaking too loudly would summon the evil back to life. In one room alone, evidence suggested a pattern, a method, and a purpose that made even the most jaded investigators pause. Now, you might be wondering, what could possibly drive someone to conceal horrors of such magnitude within their own home? It's a question psychologists, criminal profilers, and criminologists wrestle with constantly. The human mind is capable of astonishing brilliance, but it is also capable of unimaginable darkness. And Hollywood, with its endless stream of adulation, obsession, and pressure, can act as both magnifying glass and magnifier of the darkest impulses. Was it wealth that created the opportunity? Fame that encouraged secrecy? Or something far deeper, more disturbing? As we peel back the layers of this story, you'll see how every clue, every inconsistency, and every seemingly trivial detail builds toward a truth that almost defies belief. The mansion itself seemed to have a personality, a presence that whispered of the secrets it contained. Rooms were lavishly decorated, every item perfectly placed, every surface polished. But beneath the glamour were hidden compartments, concealed passages, and locked closets that even longtime staff hadn't seen. The agents documented every inch, every crack, every shadow. And it was there, in those hidden spaces, that the unimaginable awaited. Evidence that pointed not just to a crime, but to a lifestyle of concealment and meticulous planning. Every discovery raised more questions than it answered. How long had this been going on? Who else knew? And most importantly, how could someone so celebrated hide such a double life without the world noticing? What makes this case even more chilling is the human element. Behind every shocking discovery, there is a family, a network of relationships, and an emotional landscape that complicates the story. Friends, neighbors, colleagues, all are drawn into the orbit of events, each with their own interpretations, secrets, and biases. Some are sympathetic, some suspicious, and some are terrified of what the truth might mean. And in every investigation, it is these human reactions, these emotional ripples, that add layers of complexity. When we later explore the individual chapters of this story, you'll see how betrayal, obsession, and fear intersected to create a scenario that nobody could have predicted. And yet, even with all the grim discoveries, the mansion held its secrets tightly. Some of the most shocking revelations weren't obvious at first glance. The agents were forced to look deeper, analyze patterns, cross-check timelines, and interview every person who had ever set foot in the house. With every step, the narrative shifted, the story bent in unexpected ways, and the suspense grew. The family dynamic, the eccentricities of the director, the peculiarities of the son, they all became pieces of a puzzle that, once assembled, would shock the world. This is the kind of story that makes you question what you see in your own life, in your own neighborhood. What lies hidden behind perfectly manicured lawns? What shadows lurk behind smiling faces? By now, you might be thinking you've heard enough to piece the story together, but you haven't even scratched the surface. What the FBI uncovered was beyond the scope of imagination, stretching the limits of what a single household could conceal. Rooms that appeared empty, suddenly revealing hidden contents. Documents that hinted at obsession, betrayal, and long-buried secrets. Evidence that connected the past with the present in ways nobody anticipated. Every discovery, no matter how small, amplified the shock factor. And every revelation came with its own set of questions, its own set of horrifying possibilities. So why should you care about this story? Because it's not just about one mansion, one family, or one crime. It's about the fragility of perception, the masks people wear, and the lengths humans will go to hide their darkest impulses. It's about the intersection of wealth, fame, and secrecy. A trifecta that can both protect and destroy. And it's about the inevitability of discovery. No matter how carefully secrets are buried, some truths have a way of clawing their way to the surface, demanding acknowledgement, demanding attention, demanding reckoning. And now, here's the twist. As shocking as the initial findings were, they were only the beginning. The mansion had one more secret, one final revelation, one hidden truth that even the FBI had not anticipated. A detail so profound, so deeply unsettling, that it would turn the investigation on its head and force everyone involved to reconsider everything they thought they knew. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It was a morning like any other in Los Angeles, or so it seemed. The sun had barely broken over the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink, when the first calls came in. Neighbors reported an unusual quiet. A stillness that didn't belong to a house that had always thrummed with life. The sprawling mansion sat on its hill, commanding views of the city below, but that morning, it looked like something from a horror film set, pristine on the outside, yet silent in a way that made people uneasy. What made it worse was the absence of any movement, no laughter, no footsteps, no telltale signs of activity. For the FBI agents who first arrived, it was a small detail, but a crucial one. As they approached the gates, the house seemed to loom larger. Its architecture was grandiose, classic Hollywood glam, the kind of home that might be featured in glossy magazines or reality shows about celebrity wealth. But there was a tension in the air, an invisible weight that pressed down on everyone who entered. Agents often talk about sensing danger before they see it. Today, that instinct was sharp, almost painful. What could have made this house, filled with fame, luxury, and prestige, suddenly feel like the epicenter of something terrifying. The first step inside the mansion was the step into another world entirely. The foyer was magnificent, marble floors gleaming, golden chandeliers reflecting the light like shards of glass, and walls lined with photographs and awards that chronicled a life of cinematic brilliance. But even as the agents took in the opulence, their trained eyes caught anomalies. A photograph slightly askew, a faint smudge on the wall that didn't belong, the scent of something faintly metallic lingering in the air. Small things, tiny things. Yet in investigations like this, small things can be the doorway to unimaginable discoveries. Inside, the scene was deceptively calm. The house had been maintained, immaculately so, giving the illusion of normalcy. But the agents had been trained for years to see through illusions. And as they moved deeper into the house, the first clues emerged. A door locked from the inside. A closet that seemed ordinary, yet yielded no light or sound when opened. A faint draft that hinted at hidden passages. It wasn't long before the first whispers among the agents surfaced. "This isn't just a house," one murmured. "This is a labyrinth." Then came the bedrooms. These were personal spaces, often overlooked in investigations, but here they told stories in silence. The agents noticed subtle signs, beds that appeared slept in but weren't, personal items out of place, subtle scratches on walls, and furniture moved slightly off-center. What did it all mean? Was it just eccentricity, or was there something more deliberate at play? The more they explored, the more the mansion seemed alive, holding secrets in its walls, secrets that were ready to reveal themselves only to those patient and persistent enough to look. Every step forward brought tension to a new level. And then, they found the first shocking piece of evidence, a small, hidden compartment behind a painting. At first glance, it seemed innocuous, an old safe tucked away behind the ornate frame. But the contents inside were not only unexpected, they were deeply unsettling. Documents, letters, photographs, each hinting at connections, plans, and relationships that no one outside the family had been aware of. Some of the letters were dated decades prior, suggesting a pattern, a methodical approach to hiding things over long periods. And that was just the beginning. Agents began to realize that the mansion was more than just a home. It was a carefully curated archive of secrets. Secret passageways, hidden doors, and cleverly disguised rooms revealed themselves as the search continued. Each discovery prompted more questions than answers. Who had designed these hidden spaces? Why? And most importantly, what had been hidden there? The psychological implications alone were staggering. When someone goes to such lengths to conceal parts of their life, it forces investigators to ask the unthinkable. What else might be hidden, and how far does this extend? But what really set this investigation apart from any other was the emotional tension that hung over the mansion. For family members, staff, and even some close friends, there was the gnawing sense that the public narrative didn't match reality, that the life of glamour, creativity, and apparent stability concealed a darker, more complex truth. Some of the staff members were visibly shaken. One longtime housekeeper described the mornings before the discovery, noting odd behaviors. Doors closed quickly, strange noises in the night, a son who seemed tense, distant, almost hostile. None of these details seemed significant at first, but in hindsight, they were threads in a larger, horrifying tapestry. Then came the living areas. The grand salon, usually a place for entertaining, offered more than luxury. It provided insight into the dual life of the occupants. Every piece of furniture seemed carefully placed to project comfort and status. But in hidden corners, agents found traces of planning. Encrypted journals, receipts that didn't match any known purchases, and personal effects hidden in bookshelves. Every finding added a layer of complexity. And the more the agents uncovered, the more they realized that appearances were deliberately deceptive. This wasn't just a house of wealth, it was a house of concealment. By now, whispers among the team had turned into full-blown discussions. Some agents were disturbed by what they were finding. Others were puzzled by the meticulous nature of the arrangements. How could someone maintain such an intricate web of secrecy in plain sight? It seemed almost impossible, yet here it was. The mansion was not only a home. It was a fortress of hidden truths, secrets meticulously crafted over decades. And as the team worked through the rooms, closets, and hidden compartments, a pattern began to emerge. A pattern that suggested this was not random, not spontaneous, but deliberate, calculated. And just when it seemed that the day could not get any more tense, they found it. The first truly shocking discovery that changed the trajectory of the investigation. Hidden in a small, nondescript room beneath the mansion, behind a cleverly concealed panel, agents found evidence that suggested an organized, long-term series of events, carefully documented, with connections spanning years. The implications were staggering. Every mind in the room went silent. This wasn't just a domestic crime. It was something far more elaborate. The sense of disbelief was palpable. Everyone knew, deep down, that this was no ordinary case. What made it even more surreal was the reaction of those closest to the occupants. Friends and associates, once reassured by the normalcy of daily routines, began to see the cracks. The subtle inconsistencies, the odd behaviors, the small anomalies in correspondence, all began to make sense. And for the agents, the puzzle became more intricate with each passing hour. How could a single household contain so many secrets? How could so much go unnoticed for so long? And perhaps the most pressing question, what was the ultimate purpose of all this concealment? But just when it seemed the story had reached a plateau of shock, the mansion revealed yet another secret. A room that no one had entered before, completely sealed off, held objects and materials that suggested the presence of a life hidden even from the most intimate friends and family members. Agents whispered among themselves, careful not to voice the thought aloud, but the implication was clear. What they had discovered so far was only the tip of the iceberg. And the deeper they dug, the more the story threatened to spiral into something that defied logic, ethics, and the boundaries of imagination. As the sun set over Los Angeles, casting long shadows across the mansion, the team realized something chilling. This was not just an investigation of evidence. This was an investigation of human behavior, psychology, and the extremes of secrecy and obsession. Every door they opened, every compartment they uncovered, brought them closer to a truth that was almost impossible to comprehend. And yet, the mansion had one final twist waiting, a revelation so unexpected, so profoundly disturbing, that it would redefine everything they thought they knew. It wasn't long after the initial sweep of the mansion that the agents stumbled upon something that would make even the most seasoned investigator pause. A small, almost invisible seam in the wall, concealed behind an ornate bookcase in the study, caught the corner of one agent's eye. At first glance, it seemed like a simple design flaw, an imperfection in the woodwork. But instincts honed over years of high-stakes investigations told them otherwise. There was intention here. Careful, meticulous intention. Did anyone else see that? One agent asked quietly. The room fell silent, the weight of anticipation pressing down on everyone. A secret door, they realized, was hiding in plain sight. And not just hiding. It was designed to be overlooked, camouflaged seamlessly into the surroundings. As the agents activated the mechanism, and the walls slowly creaked open, a rush of cold air spilled into the study. The temperature dropped noticeably, a physical reminder that some secrets had been locked away for a reason. The room beyond was smaller than expected, dimly lit, and lined with shelves that seemed to stretch endlessly into the shadows. Dust motes danced in the weak light, disturbed after years of undisturbed slumber. At first, nothing seemed out of place. It looked almost like an archive, a private library. But then, as they moved deeper, the first truly shocking evidence came into view. Hidden in plain sight, among ordinary-looking binders and boxes, were documents, photographs, and items that suggested a side of the mansion and its occupants that no one had imagined. The photographs were the first to draw attention. At first glance, they seemed like family photos, casual shots of everyday life. But something was off. Faces were obscured, locations didn't match known addresses, and timestamps were inconsistent. These weren't innocent snapshots. They were records of events and encounters carefully documented, almost ritualistically. Some images were blurred, perhaps intentionally, others too precise to be accidental. The agents exchanged glances. This was no ordinary evidence. Then came the documents. stacks of papers, each meticulously labeled, cataloged, and folded. Financial records, letters, and journals. Some were coded, some encrypted, all pointing to a pattern of behavior that raised more questions than it answered. Every piece suggested an obsessive attention to detail, a compulsion to record and archive aspects of life that had no explanation, at least, none that made sense to the outside world. One agent muttered under his breath, "This is organized, but for what?" Even stranger were the items interspersed among the documents. Small trinkets, artifacts, and objects that seemed entirely mundane until examined closely. A key here, a token there, each one linked to the papers and photographs, forming a web of connections that only hinted at the larger story. There was a sense of method, of purpose, of design. Whoever had placed these items here had thought through every possibility, ensuring that what remained hidden could be discovered, but only by someone diligent enough to find it. As the search continued, another agent noticed a false panel at the far end of the room. Behind it lay a narrow corridor, dimly lit, descending into darkness. It was cold and smelled faintly of dampness, but it carried a weight of anticipation. This wasn't just another storage space. It was a path to something deliberately concealed, a private realm that had been off-limits even to those who lived in the mansion. The agents paused, exchanging wary glances. What could be hidden further down this corridor? And why was it so carefully protected from view? The corridor led to a series of rooms that appeared almost ceremonial in nature. The walls were lined with shelves, cupboards, and locked cabinets. The lighting was subdued, intentional, giving the spaces a somber, reverent feel. It was clear that someone had used these rooms as more than storage. These were places of focus, obsession, perhaps even ritual. Small details, the careful arrangement of objects, the repetition of certain symbols, the methodical cataloging of items, suggested a mind both brilliant and deeply disturbed. In one of the rooms, the agents discovered binders filled with meticulous notes on encounters and events spanning years. Each entry was detailed, precise, and unsettlingly personal. Names, dates, locations, and descriptions of interactions suggested that these records were more than memories. They were an attempt to preserve, control, and perhaps manipulate reality itself. Some entries hinted at conflicts, betrayals, and emotional intensity that had never been visible to friends or colleagues. Reading through them, the agents realized that the family's public image, the polished, admired facade, was only one part of the story. And then came the moment that would define the investigation. Hidden within a locked cabinet, secured by a combination that had clearly been changed over time, were objects that defied explanation. Small artifacts, personal belongings, and evidence of actions that could not be ignored. It was clear that the mansion had been more than a home. It had been a vault, a repository for secrets too sensitive, too dangerous, or too shameful to be kept anywhere else. The implications were staggering. Every agent in the room understood that what they were seeing would dominate headlines, fuel speculation, and challenge perceptions of wealth, fame, and human behavior. Despite the magnitude of the discoveries, the agents had to maintain composure. Procedures were followed, evidence meticulously documented, and rooms cataloged. But it was impossible to ignore the psychological weight of the environment. The mansion, once a symbol of success and creativity, had become a testament to obsession and secrecy. Every door, every hidden compartment, every item discovered suggested layers upon layers of concealment. And for the agents, the question that burned in their minds was simple. If this much could be hidden in plain sight, what else had gone unnoticed? Outside the hidden rooms, the mansion continued to reveal its contradictions. While the luxurious living areas projected comfort, warmth, and status, the concealed spaces told a very different story. There was a deliberate duality here. One life presented to the world, another carefully shielded from view. And the more the agents uncovered, the more the tension escalated. Each room was a puzzle piece, each artifact a clue, and together they hinted at a narrative that nobody could have anticipated. Yet, even with the magnitude of the hidden evidence, the mansion was not finished revealing its secrets. One final, chilling discovery awaited. A room so deeply concealed that only the most thorough investigation could uncover it. What lay within would redefine everything the agents thought they had understood. It was a room that held both physical evidence and the emotional weight of decades of hidden behavior. It was a place where the boundaries between obsession, secrecy, and reality blurred completely. As the agents prepared to open the last door, the tension in the mansion reached a peak. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows through the hallways and corridors, a perfect metaphor for the darkness hidden within. Every member of the team knew, instinctively, that what they were about to uncover would surpass anything seen in the previous rooms. The mansion had been a guardian of secrets, and now, finally, it was ready to surrender the most shocking truth of all. But what came next would be so shocking, so unexpected, that even the seasoned agents braced themselves. And just beyond that door lay evidence that would challenge assumptions, ignite fear, and raise questions that might never be fully answered. The agents had seen a lot in their careers: hidden stashes, illicit materials, organized crime evidence. But nothing had prepared them for what lay behind the next door. A subtle draft led them to a final chamber, one that was not on any of the mansion's blueprints. The door itself was heavy, reinforced, and entirely unmarked. The kind of door you would never notice if you weren't looking for it. And the moment it creaked open, a silence fell over the room, as though the mansion itself was holding its breath. The room was small but meticulously organized. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, filled with binders, folders, and meticulously labeled boxes. At first, it seemed like the continuation of the archive discovered earlier, but as agents moved closer, they began to notice inconsistencies. Some boxes were sealed, but the seals had been tampered with, replaced with new ones. Some binders contained documents in foreign languages, while others were written in complex codes. The careful patterns suggested an intelligence behind the storage, a mind that had thought through every eventuality and anticipated every potential threat. Then came the photographs. They were the first real shock. At first glance, they seemed like typical snapshots of life in the mansion. Formal dinners, events, holidays, but a closer inspection revealed something chilling. There were people in the photos whose identities didn't match anyone the agents had ever heard of. Some images were taken in locations that didn't exist, or in rooms that were supposed to be empty. The timestamps didn't match reality, and some images were staged with a precision that suggested intentionality rather than coincidence. It was as though the mansion itself had been documenting a parallel reality, one that existed in secret, carefully hidden from the outside world. As agents examined the documents, a narrative began to emerge, one that contradicted the public perception of the household entirely. The binders contained journals, letters, and handwritten notes detailing interactions, plans, and personal reflections. Some were mundane, others disturbing. Many entries referenced individuals who had never been publicly associated with the family. Names, dates, and places suggested a network, a history of interactions meticulously recorded over decades. And in some cases, the notes hinted at actions and behaviors that had never been witnessed by anyone outside the mansion. The psychological implications were profound. Whoever had kept these records had not only documented reality, they had shaped it. They had constructed a hidden world within the confines of the mansion, a world governed by secrecy, obsession, and meticulous planning. For the agents, it was difficult to separate fact from speculation. How much of what they saw was real? How much was intended to manipulate perception? And most importantly, what was the purpose of maintaining such a detailed record in secret? In one corner of the room, a locked cabinet drew particular attention. The lock was sophisticated, a type that required knowledge of both the mechanism and the combination. After some careful maneuvering, agents managed to open it. Inside were items that defied belief. Personal belongings of individuals never seen by the public, artifacts that suggested clandestine meetings, and documents with highly sensitive information. Each object was accompanied by handwritten notes, explaining its significance and linking it to the larger network of evidence. The scale and depth of the collection were unprecedented, and the agents understood immediately that this was far beyond anything they had encountered in prior cases. The deeper they delved, the more the mansion's duality became apparent. The public facade, the luxurious home, the celebrated family, the social events, the glamorous lifestyle, was only one layer. Beneath it lay a shadow world, meticulously curated and preserved. A place where events were recorded with obsessive precision, secrets were hidden behind secret doors, and a parallel reality was maintained for decades. And as agents connected the dots between the hidden rooms, the photographs, and the documents, a disturbing pattern emerged. The mansion had been more than a home. It had been a living archive, a repository of actions, relationships, and secrets that no one outside the walls could have imagined. Then came the first real twist. The discovery that would define the rest of the investigation. In one binder, carefully labeled and preserved, agents found detailed accounts of interactions with individuals who were never publicly associated with the household. The entries were explicit, detailed, and alarming. They suggested patterns of behavior that were both obsessive and calculated. Some entries described manipulation, others detailed coercion or secrecy, and all were carefully cross-referenced with photographs, receipts, and other supporting evidence. It was clear that someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to maintain control over what happened within the mansion and to document it for future reference. The emotional weight of the discovery hit the agents hard. For anyone untrained, it would have been overwhelming. For these professionals, it was a different kind of challenge. How do you process evidence that seems to rewrite everything you thought you knew? How do you maintain objectivity when confronted with layers of human behavior that are so complex, so secretive, and so disturbing? And most importantly, how do you prepare for what comes next when the mansion still had secrets left to reveal? Every new discovery seemed to add more questions than answers. Why had the family gone to such lengths to document and conceal these activities? How many people were involved, knowingly or unknowingly? And what was the ultimate goal of maintaining such a hidden archive? The agents began to realize that the mansion was not just a home. It was a carefully orchestrated ecosystem, designed to project one reality to the outside world while preserving another, hidden world behind locked doors, hidden panels, and secret corridors. And just when it seemed the narrative could not get any more complex, the agents found it. A series of small, meticulously preserved boxes that contained evidence of actions so deliberate, so carefully hidden, that it suggested premeditation on a scale rarely seen. Each box contained items linked to specific individuals, locations, and dates, along with handwritten notes explaining the significance. It was a level of documentation that went beyond typical obsession. It was strategy. The mansion, in its quiet, opulent way, had been concealing not only a family's private life, but also a meticulously orchestrated history of events that no outsider could have predicted. The implications were staggering. The mansion had become a repository for secrets, a chronicle of hidden actions, and a place where the boundaries between ordinary life and concealed reality blurred completely. Every object, every photograph, every document was a piece of a larger puzzle. A puzzle that demanded careful analysis, scrutiny, and, most of all, respect for the complexity of the human mind. The agents understood that the story they were uncovering was not simply about a household. It was about the extremes of secrecy, control, and obsession. And just as the day seemed to reach a climax, the mansion revealed yet another layer. A hidden compartment behind one of the shelves, so cleverly constructed that it had gone unnoticed during the initial sweep. Inside were items that suggested a continuity of behavior over decades, linking past events to the present in ways that were both shocking and illuminating. The agents could not have anticipated what they would find, and the moment they realized the scope of the evidence, a new understanding dawned. The mansion was more than a home, more than a family archive. It was a living record of hidden lives, secret actions, and meticulously concealed truths. But what came next would push the boundaries even further, revealing evidence that was so unexpected, so profoundly disturbing, that it would redefine the investigation and challenge everything the agents thought they knew about secrecy, obsession, and the hidden darkness behind closed doors. The mansion had already revealed layers of hidden evidence, but nothing prepared the agents for what they were about to find next. After hours of cataloging documents, photographs, and meticulously organized boxes, a sense of anticipation, mixed with dread, filled the air. The team had learned to expect the unexpected, but instinctively, They knew that the next discovery would redefine everything. And in investigations like this, instinct rarely lies. It began with a subtle sound, a faint click behind a wall panel in the hallway connecting the hidden rooms. One of the agents, trained to notice anomalies, paused and pressed lightly against the panel. A section of the wall shifted, revealing a narrow passageway, almost invisible without careful observation. The passage was cold, musty, and uninviting, yet it beckoned them forward, as though it held the answers to questions no one had dared to ask. Every step deeper into the corridor increased the tension. The mansion seemed alive, every creak and whisper a reminder that the secrets it held were far from ordinary. The corridor ended at a reinforced door, smaller than the others but undeniably deliberate. It was locked, but not by a conventional key. This required a code, something the occupants had clearly intended to remain undiscovered for as long as possible. After careful manipulation, the agents managed to open it, revealing a room that was darker and colder than any other they had seen in the mansion. The air smelled faintly metallic, and a sense of foreboding filled the space. This was a room designed to remain hidden, its contents untouched, waiting for the right moment, or the right intruder, to reveal themselves. As the agents stepped inside, the magnitude of the evidence hit them immediately. Rows of shelves lined the walls, filled with small boxes, each labeled with dates and cryptic annotations. At first, the items appeared innocuous, personal effects, trinkets, notes, but as they examined them more closely, a horrifying pattern began to emerge. Each box contained artifacts tied to individuals whose identities were largely unknown. Letters, photographs, and objects carefully preserved over decades formed a network of connections too complex to fully grasp at first glance. The meticulousness of the archive suggested planning, obsession, and an almost pathological need to record every interaction. Then came the photographs. Some were staged, some candid, but all shared a chilling quality. The subjects seemed unaware of the camera, or perhaps deliberately positioned, their expressions unreadable. The timestamps on the images were inconsistent with public records, some predating events, others overlapping with known activities. Whoever had documented these moments had operated with precision, creating a record that could both illuminate and manipulate reality. The photographs hinted at interactions, secrets, and relationships that had never been visible to the public or even to those closest to the occupants. It wasn't just the objects that shocked the agents. It was the narrative that emerged from them. Every box, every document, every photograph was part of a larger story, meticulously recorded over decades. Journals detailed personal interactions with an almost clinical attention to detail, describing behaviors, emotional responses, and even the unspoken thoughts of individuals involved. The entries were precise, methodical, and deeply unsettling. For the investigators, it became clear that the mansion had not merely been a home. It had been a controlled environment, a carefully curated space where actions were observed, recorded, and preserved. The psychological weight of the room was immense. Agents whispered among themselves, aware that the evidence they were uncovering went far beyond ordinary domestic secrets. The documentation suggested a dual life, meticulously hidden from the world. A life where appearances were maintained on the surface, while below, a complex web of control, secrecy, and obsession dictated behavior. And yet, despite the grim revelations, there was an undeniable brilliance to the meticulousness, a strange respect for the intelligence required to maintain such an elaborate system over decades. In one corner of the room, a series of boxes drew particular attention. They contained letters and documents that were explicitly organized by date, location, and subject. Some were correspondence with individuals whose identities remained unknown, while others referenced events that were not publicly documented. Each entry provided context, connecting actions, interactions, and outcomes in a way that suggested deliberate planning. The mansion was not simply a repository of personal history. It was a meticulously constructed record of control, secrecy, and influence. The emotional resonance of the room was profound. The agents began to piece together the human element, a family living in public glamour, while in private, orchestrating a complex web of hidden actions and relationships. The contrast between the polished exterior and the concealed interior could not have been more stark. And as the agents continued their careful examination, they realized that the patterns of secrecy extended beyond the physical confines of the mansion, touching aspects of life that had been carefully hidden from the public eye for decades. Then came the first truly shocking discovery within the hidden room, a set of personal effects tied to individuals that the agents could not immediately identify, items that suggested the presence of a life entirely hidden from the world. Interactions, relationships, and actions meticulously recorded and preserved. Some objects appeared mundane, but the accompanying notes made it clear they were of extreme significance. The level of organization suggested an obsessive compulsion to document every detail, no matter how minor it seemed at first glance. It was at this moment that the agents realized the implications of their discoveries. The mansion was not only a physical space of concealment, but a psychological landscape, carefully curated and preserved. Every object, document, and photograph was part of a larger narrative, a story that had been unfolding in secret for decades. And the realization hit them. This was not just about evidence. It was about understanding the mind that had orchestrated such a hidden life, the motives, the obsessions, and the lengths taken to preserve secrecy. And yet, despite the meticulous organization, something was off. A pattern emerged that suggested certain boxes had been moved or disturbed. Someone had accessed parts of the collection, perhaps recently. The mansion, it seemed, had been hiding not just long-term secrets, but ongoing activity. This revelation added an additional layer of complexity. If someone had interacted with the hidden rooms recently, what had they done, and why? The agents were faced with the chilling possibility that the secrets of the mansion were not static. They were living, evolving, and potentially dangerous. As the day wore on, the agents meticulously documented every discovery. Every photograph, every note, every object was photographed, cataloged, and recorded. But the deeper they went, the more the mansion seemed to resist their efforts to contain its narrative. Each revelation opened new questions. Who had been involved in creating this hidden archive? How far-reaching were the interactions documented within these walls? And most importantly, what was the ultimate purpose behind such a meticulously preserved secret life? Then, just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows through the mansion's hidden corridors, the final, chilling piece of evidence revealed itself. Behind a false panel in the far corner of the room lay a box larger than any they had encountered. Its contents were unmistakable, carefully preserved artifacts, documents, and objects that linked the hidden life of the mansion to a series of events that had never been publicly known. The significance was immediate, the implications staggering. The mansion had been holding the answers to questions no one outside had even thought to ask. But the agents also realized something else, something that would change the course of the investigation. The box contained clues that pointed to involvement beyond the family itself. Others had been implicated, intentionally or unknowingly, in the mansion's hidden narrative. Connections extended outward, reaching into areas and lives that the investigators could not yet fully comprehend. And as they looked at the evidence, the room seemed to close in around them, the weight of secrecy pressing heavier than ever. The mansion had revealed its darkest secrets, but even in that moment of revelation, a larger, more shocking truth waited. One that would not only redefine the investigation, but also challenge everything the agents had assumed about the lives unfolding behind these walls. The final twist was still ahead, hidden, waiting to be discovered. The mansion had already revealed layers of hidden rooms, secret compartments, and meticulously organized evidence. But as the agents began connecting the dots, a larger, far more intricate picture began to emerge. The hidden rooms were not just storage spaces. They were nodes in a network of secrets, each one tied to people, places, and events that had previously been invisible. And the deeper the agents looked, the more they realized that this web of secrecy extended far beyond the walls of the mansion. It started with the journals. Each journal chronicled not only daily life, but patterns of behavior, interactions with unknown individuals, and even observations about the family itself. Some entries were innocuous at first glance. descriptions of meals, conversations, or casual encounters. But upon closer inspection, they revealed subtle layers of control and manipulation. The author of the journals had meticulously recorded who said what, who moved where, and who knew what at any given moment. Every entry was a calculated observation, every detail carefully preserved. Then came the letters, thousands of them, each with unique handwriting, dates, and cryptic annotations. Many had been sent, some never mailed, others deliberately intercepted or concealed. The letters contained references to events, relationships, and occurrences that no one outside the mansion could have known about. Names appeared and disappeared across the pages, some real, some pseudonyms, creating a labyrinthine record of interaction. It was as if the mansion itself were alive, chronicling a hidden life layer by layer, documenting secrets that were never meant to be exposed. The photographs, too, took on new significance in this context. Images that had once seemed ambiguous were now revealed as pieces of a larger puzzle. Staged or candid, they provided visual documentation of interactions, locations, and events that linked directly to the journals and letters. Each photograph had been carefully labeled, indexed, and cross-referenced with other evidence, creating a network of proof that connected the mansion's hidden life to the outside world in ways no one had anticipated. Agents realized they were not merely piecing together a private history. They were uncovering an entire system of surveillance, documentation, and concealment. The psychological complexity of the situation was staggering. Whoever had orchestrated this web of secrecy possessed a mind capable of incredible foresight and planning. They anticipated human behavior, predicted responses, and accounted for contingencies over years, possibly decades. The mansion had been designed to maintain an illusion of normalcy on the surface, while beneath it existed a meticulously controlled environment where actions, interactions, and emotions were observed, recorded, and cataloged with obsessive precision. The duality of the family's life was extraordinary, one public, one hidden, each functioning in a delicate balance, and the mansion was the engine driving it. It wasn't long before patterns began to emerge. The agents noticed that certain dates were repeatedly referenced across journals, letters, and photographs. These weren't arbitrary. They marked specific events, anniversaries, or moments of significance within the household. Some indicated gatherings, others suggested clandestine meetings, and a few hinted at undisclosed interactions with individuals whose identities were intentionally obscured. The mansion had been more than a residence. It had been a stage, and the family members were both actors and archivists in a play that had been unfolding in secret for decades. One of the most disturbing realizations came from examining the boxes containing personal effects, items that seemed mundane. Keys, small trinkets, or documents were linked to events, dates, and interactions that suggested manipulation, control, or secrecy. The annotations accompanying these items were explicit, detailing not only the significance of the objects, but also instructions or observations about the individuals connected to them. It was a level of organization that suggested both brilliance and obsession, and the agents quickly understood that they were witnessing a psychological ecosystem unlike any other they had encountered. And then there was the son. Though largely absent from the initial physical discoveries, his presence was implied throughout the documentation. Notes, letters, and journals referenced his behavior, movements, and interactions with the family. Some passages were benign. Observations about habits, preferences, or moods, but others were deeply troubling, suggesting tension, conflict, or hidden motivations. The mansion itself seemed to bear witness to his actions, preserving a record of his involvement in the family's secret life. The agents realized that understanding him was crucial to unraveling the web of secrets, yet even with the documentation, he remained an enigma, a presence felt, but not fully understood. Another revelation came when agents discovered a series of maps and diagrams hidden in a cabinet. At first, they appeared to be architectural sketches, plans for renovations, or decorative diagrams. But closer examination revealed subtle annotations indicating hidden pathways, secret compartments, and locations tied to specific items and events. The mansion itself was a carefully constructed system of concealment, designed not only to house the family, but to preserve and control access to the hidden evidence. Every architectural choice, every design element, served a dual purpose: to maintain normalcy and to safeguard secrets. The agents began to piece together a timeline. Using photographs, letters, and journal entries, they reconstructed a series of interactions, events, and hidden actions spanning decades. It was a staggering task, but one that revealed the true scope of the mansion's hidden life. Patterns of behavior, repeated interactions, and meticulously documented events suggested that secrecy was not incidental. It was the foundation upon which the family had built their private world. The mansion had become a living archive, preserving not only objects, but memories, interactions, and intentions. And yet, for all the evidence uncovered, the most shocking aspect remained just out of reach. Some of the boxes and files hinted at events and interactions so sensitive that the agents could only speculate about their true nature. Names and locations were deliberately obscured, coded, or encrypted. The mansion had preserved evidence of a hidden life, but it had done so in a way that demanded careful analysis, interpretation, and patience. The investigators understood immediately that they were not merely uncovering secrets. They were being drawn into a psychological labyrinth, one that would test their understanding of human behavior, secrecy, and obsession. As the sun set and shadows lengthened across the hidden rooms, the agents felt the weight of the mansion pressing down on them. Every discovery, every document, every photograph revealed a fragment of truth, but also raised countless new questions. Who had been involved? What had motivated these actions? And how far did the hidden life extend beyond the walls of the mansion? The agents knew they were only scratching the surface, and the mansion still had secrets left to reveal, secrets that would redefine everything they thought they knew about the family, the house, and the nature of hidden obsession. But just when the team thought they had begun to grasp the scope of the secrets, the mansion revealed its next twist. A discovery so unexpected, so profoundly disturbing, that it would push the investigation into uncharted territory. The web of hidden life, meticulously preserved for decades, was only beginning to unravel, and what came next would shock everyone involved, changing the story in ways that no one could have predicted. By the time the agents reached the sixth chapter of their investigation, metaphorically speaking, the mansion had already revealed layers of meticulously hidden evidence, from secret rooms to encrypted journals, from photographs to personal artifacts. But nothing could prepare them for what came next, a discovery so explosive that it threatened to upend everything they thought they knew about the household. The sense of anticipation in the air was almost palpable. The mansion, it seemed, was holding its breath, waiting for the right moment to reveal its darkest secret. It started with a faint vibration behind one of the walls in the hallway leading to the hidden rooms. The agents paused, instinctively tense. Unlike the other panels, this one seemed different, less obvious, almost organic in its concealment. One agent pressed lightly against the wall, and it shifted with a barely audible click. Inside was a narrow compartment, almost invisible unless you were specifically searching for it. The discovery of this hidden passage was a reminder. The mansion had been designed not just to store secrets, but to guard them fiercely. Every inch of its architecture was a lesson in misdirection and deliberate concealment. The compartment led to a small, unassuming room, dimly lit and cold. At first glance, it appeared empty, a mere storage space. But the trained eyes of the agents noticed subtle anomalies. The air was slightly heavier here, the dust disturbed in patterns inconsistent with neglect. As they approached the corner, a box caught their attention, a simple wooden container, sealed with a lock and annotated with dates and cryptic symbols. Unlike other items they had encountered, this one radiated significance, as though it were intentionally set apart, deliberately preserved to be found only by those who were thorough enough to uncover it. Breaking the seal revealed the first explosive secret: documents and photographs that tied the family's private life to events and individuals previously unknown. The contents were alarming in their specificity, detailing interactions, movements, and encounters that had been carefully hidden from the outside world. Some photographs were explicit in documenting meetings, while the letters described relationships in ways that were both shocking and deeply personal. For the agents, it was immediately clear that they were dealing with evidence of extraordinary magnitude. The mansion was not just a home. It was a carefully curated chronicle of hidden activity, meticulously documented for decades. As they dug deeper, the implications became chillingly clear. The documentation suggested a pattern of behavior, an intentional orchestration of events that had been ongoing for years. The notes were precise, almost clinical, detailing dates, times, locations, and individuals involved. The photographs corroborated these entries, offering visual proof of interactions that were never publicly disclosed. This was not simply a record of domestic life. It was evidence of deliberate planning, of control, and of secrecy maintained at an astonishing level of detail. Even more disturbing were the personal effects contained within the box, items that seemed mundane at first. Keys, jewelry, personal belongings were accompanied by handwritten annotations that indicated their significance. Some items were linked to specific individuals, others to events or locations. Each object was a node in a complex network of evidence, connecting interactions, behaviors, and actions in ways that suggested careful orchestration and deliberate concealment. The agents realized immediately that the mansion had functioned not just as a home, but as a repository for evidence of a hidden life, one that had been meticulously maintained and preserved for decades. The psychological implications were profound. Whoever had organized these items had an extraordinary ability to anticipate human behavior, to plan for contingencies, and to maintain control over a vast network of interactions. The mansion was more than a residence. It was a manifestation of the mind that had orchestrated its contents, a physical representation of an obsession with secrecy, documentation, and control. For the agents, understanding this mind became as important as cataloging the evidence itself. Every item told a story, every photograph hinted at motivations, and every document revealed a layer of complexity that was both fascinating and horrifying. Then came the journals. Carefully preserved, cross-referenced, and annotated, they contained explicit details of the family's hidden life. Observations of behavior, recordings of private interactions, and accounts of events unknown to the public revealed a pattern of secrecy that extended far beyond the mansion itself. Some entries described mundane activities, while others detailed clandestine meetings, conflicts, and personal dynamics that had never been disclosed. The depth and consistency of the documentation suggested a compulsion to record, to control, and perhaps to protect secrets from discovery. It was the combination of these materials, the photographs, letters, journals, and personal effects, that revealed the mansion's first truly explosive secret. The evidence suggested a systematic concealment of events and interactions, extending beyond ordinary household management into the realm of deliberate secrecy and hidden agendas. The mansion had functioned as both a home and a controlled environment, a space where reality and concealment intersected in ways that defied conventional understanding. For the agents, the implications were staggering. The hidden life of the family was far more complex, intricate, and secretive than anyone could have imagined. The tension in the room was palpable. Every new discovery raised more questions than it answered. Who had been involved in orchestrating these hidden activities? How long had this system been in place? And most importantly, what was the ultimate purpose of maintaining such a meticulous archive? The agents realized that the mansion itself was a central character in this story, a silent witness to decades of hidden life, preserving evidence in a way that was both intentional and profoundly disturbing. As they continued to explore, the agents found evidence linking these hidden interactions to individuals outside the immediate household. Some were acquaintances, others were distant contacts, but each connection added complexity to the narrative. The mansion was not merely a repository of personal secrets. It was a hub in a network of concealed relationships and interactions, each documented with precision. The realization hit the agents hard. The scope of the mansion's hidden life extended far beyond what they had imagined, implicating individuals and events that had been carefully concealed from the public eye. And then, the moment of revelation. A single photograph, taken years earlier, that captured a private encounter in an undisclosed location. The image was innocuous at first glance, but the details were unmistakable. People, objects, and gestures that corresponded precisely to entries in the journals and annotations in the letters. The mansion had preserved this moment deliberately, ensuring that it could be documented, referenced, and understood decades later. The agents realized that they were not merely uncovering hidden events. They were witnessing the manifestation of a mind that had orchestrated and documented reality itself. The emotional impact on the team was immediate. The mansion, once a symbol of glamour and prestige, had become a site of psychological complexity, secrecy, and obsession. Every object, every document, every photograph reinforced the understanding that the household had operated in dual realities. One public, one hidden, and both meticulously maintained. And as the agents cataloged this explosive evidence, they knew that the story was far from over. The mansion still had secrets waiting to be uncovered, secrets that would challenge their assumptions and push the investigation into uncharted territory. The first explosive secret had been revealed, but it was only the beginning. The mansion's network of hidden rooms, secret passages, and meticulously preserved evidence hinted at even deeper, darker truths. And the agents understood that the final revelations, still hidden within the mansion's walls, would not only shock the public, but would redefine everything known about the family, their hidden lives, and the extraordinary measures taken to preserve secrecy.